Hey, welcome back. You know, with the great men and women of our fighting forces across the world facing adversity and their life every single day to protect the freedoms and liberties we have a left here in the United States that doesn't seem to care left about funding our military, giving them the newest weapons, giving them all the stuff they need to be the best fighting force on earth, which they've been. And when you get into terrorism and these small factional fights that we've been having for years now, like ISIS, and we just talked about with Colonel Dan Davis about the Taliban, it gets even harder because they don't wear uniforms and they don't stick to any Geneva Code or anything like that. And you got to put the best of the best that you got out there to go fight them out and root them out and kill terrorism. And joining us now is the guy who led those forces for almost 20 years, Colonel Andrew Milburn joins us. Colonel Andrew Milburn is the author of the book, When the Tempest Gathers, and he was in all forms of fighting, and especially leading our special forces. He retired in 2019 as the Chief of Staff of Special Operations Command, SOCCENT as they call it. And this headquarters was responsible for the conduct of all U.S. special operations throughout the Middle East. And just in the last year, he retired his uniform for a business suit. I want to thank you very much, Colonel, for joining us. You have an amazing story to begin with.
Well, thanks, Frank. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you mentioning the book. You know, and by way of clarification, the book's not so much about myself as about the men and women with whom I served.
I went through the book. Frank briefed me on it, but I know the people, New York Times best-selling author Bing West, who wrote a lot of books about military.
He's very generous.
Talks about how this is not a story about you. It's you telling a story about what's really going on inside these platoons and these special forces groups when they're going in there. And you know, you may have seen, we just had Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis on. You know, he's a great expert. You know, he's a retired Army guy. And he keeps saying, we got to get out of Afghanistan. We got to get out of Syria. We got to get out of all these places where we don't really have a lot of skin in the game. It seems like even President Trump is trying to find some kind of peace in the Middle East.
I hope so.
Now, you were born in Hong Kong. Okay?
I was indeed, yeah.
You grew up in London, in the UK. But somehow or another, you had an American mom who gave you both citizenships.
That's right.
And even being born in Hong Kong and growing up in the UK, something spurred you on to want to join the U.S. military. What makes that happen?
Well, I tell you, so the curious thing was, Frank, back in 1980s, I knew nothing about the Marine Corps at all. 1987, I ran into the one Marine recruiter in London. I'm sure he's still laughing. So, Master Sergeant Cheshire, if you're still out there, you owe me a beer 30 years later. So here's what I knew about the Marine Corps. I'd read a couple of books. I'd seen the Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne. I'd read Battle Cry. And I'd met a group of Marines in Islamabad in Pakistan, and they're working in the embassy there as security guards. And they lived the life of Riley. And he just held up a sign and said, "John, I'm sorry."
I was letting it go. I mean, you're a colonel. I can't correct the colonel.
It's live, so we can't go back. All right, my apologies. John's a good name, man. All right, so let me fast forward. So I met these guys in Pakistan, working the embassy. Inside joke in the Marine Corps: there's one MOS, there's one job there where you live a life of luxury, and those are the embassy security guards. So I met these guys. They took me back to their house. They had a pool. They had a bar. I thought, the Marine Corps, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I graduated law school and enlisted in the Marine Corps.
So you thought at some point, and it's strange that we have a military recruiter over in London, but this guy must have a tough job getting people from the UK to join the U.S. military. But you went to the Pakistani embassy and you see all gold things and beautiful security, and not quite what you signed up for, was it?
Yeah, they had a pool table, and women just flocked to that place on Friday evenings, and that was an incentive when I was.
I would assume that that wasn't the majority of your experience.
Funnily enough,
rooting out terror.
Funnily enough, John, no, it was not. So fast forward, ended up in boot camp in Parris Island. Parris Island, by the way, is my first introduction to the United States, and Parris Island, not a very nice place.
I would imagine.
So
I would imagine. I haven't been there, and I
you
think
may
I'm
have
past
seen
the age of draft. So
you may have seen Full Metal Jacket, and it was not that dissimilar from there. So I was thinking, this country sucks. Why do people want to come here?
I read one of the, a bunch of passages in the book I want to ask you a little more detail on, but I know there was one thing you talk about in here where there's kind of, I guess, another inside saying when they say America's at war, soldiers kind of roll their eyes at that and say, no, we're at war. America's at the mall.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Is that depressing to the fighting forces when they don't think it's in the media?
We talk about, not sliding into a political discussion. When we talk about oversight of the war powers and everything else, there's simply nothing driving wars. Now, within the military, I got to tell you, does that drag morale down? No. I think most guys. So I'm as a Marine. We have our own peculiar culture, and I think most Marines they're proud to be
Marines,
a very separate culture, representing the United States.
So you were the first.
But it's a little bit
Marine.
of cynicism, yes. But it's kind of a chest beating at the same time.
So you were the first Marine to actually lead the command, the Special Officers Command.
Yeah, let me clarify that before people call in and threaten to kill me. So it was I was the first Marine to lead a colonel-led, what we call a combined joint special operations task force at that level.
Got it. And don't worry.
So no pressure.
We have so many guests focused on calling in, threatening to kill me every day. One interview during the 2 hours is not going to bring any extra pain upon you. Another thing I saw in the book, and I guess this is like getting towards the end of your time, and I don't know if it contributes to you wanting to retire, but I guess you're in plain clothes, right? And you're in an airport. And you're at this, I don't remember the country you were in, but you're at this
Turkey.
place in Turkey, and you're having a Turkish beer, right?
Yeah,
and then you
first in 6 months.
walk over to the gate. And by the way, next time you're down, we got to bring in some Turkish beer, maybe. On Liquid Lunch, we have a few cocktails here and there. But then you go to get online to board the plane, and you just have this picture in your head, like you're looking at these kids, and you refer to one as a ginger. So he's not, probably not a Muslim at heart, and you think these are just kids going to get radicalized, right?
Yeah. So that was it wasn't so much a surprise to me, but it was an eye opener. Bear in mind, we had been at war with ISIS then for, we'd been fighting ISIS 7 months in Iraq. I finished my deployment, having my beer, relaxing, waiting to get on the plane. I see these two dudes, and they're flying from. Same plane, Istanbul down to Adana, which is near a crossing point into Syria. So,
you know where they're going.
Yeah, big conduit. They've got like these, we call them chin strap beards, and kind of unkempt hair, and they clearly stood out as being ISIS recruits. So there I was, getting on the same plane as these two guys. They looked at me. They obviously knew who I was. I was in civilian clothes, but it's. You're not
masquerading as not a military guy.
But what was I going to do? It was a shock. I recognized them. We both recognized each other for who we were, and there we were sharing the same flight.
I have a lot of people who come on. We support the military big. We support the president, making appropriations to make sure that we have the best weapons, the best equipment, and the best technology out there. But one of my friends is an artist, and he does this campaign, the 22 veterans a day are committing suicide.
Yeah.
So I know you kind of fought with, post-military trauma as well. Are there things that the government could do better in that area for people?
I think the government is doing a great deal now. The VA, I think this has come as a surprise to no one. The VA recently, only very recently, has really kind of pulled its socks up as far as dealing with those. Unfortunately, down in Tampa, two friends of mine, 06s in the course of the last year. 06s, I mean, colonel rank. I mean, one a Marine, one a Special Forces guy. So guys who've built up a good deal of internal resilience, but both of them killed themselves within months of retiring. One in a VA parking lot. So in answer to your question, John, I think there's always more than can be done. I think we do a lot as veterans for each other. We reach out to guys who are out. What sustains us while we're in uniform is that extraordinary culture. and it's more important than anything. You know, the cliche about you fight for the guys around you, because sometimes you lose sight of why you're fighting. So there's no coherent policy. You fight for those around you, and that becomes all important.
I guess some of these guys back, if they don't have PTSD or this or that, it's just a separation from
It's
having
a separation.
the group around
Yeah.
you, and they feel like they're all on their own.
That's exactly right. So if all of your identity is derived from you being a Marine or a soldier, the strength that you've drawn to get you through the hard times previously have been the guys to your right and to your left upon whom you can depend. If you suddenly take all of that away, it can be traumatic, even without everything else that's been lined up.
I understand it. I thank you for your service, my friend. God bless you. And you look great in a business suit, so why don't you try to stay on this side of the wars these days? And one last thing I just wanted to say, I read in the book just a little part that I guess you see it all in the fog of war, right? You kind of remember some of it and try to recap it in these great stories that you put together in the book. We talk about, you got this email, and basically the email had 2 words in it: one fight.
Yeah.
And then when you opened it up, it had an attachment of some terrorist that finally got his face blown off.
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
Yeah,
a little bit about
absolutely. So in 2008, a very, very good friend of mine, some of your viewers may know him or know of him, Lieutenant Colonel Max Gallier was killed along with 2 of his company commanders and some of his staff in a suicide bombing in Qamar, Iraq. He was a close friend of mine, and it was days before we took over from his battalion. We thought we knew who was behind it. It was a local sheikh, actually a local sheikh that the U.S. forces had put in position and paid pretty heavily, and we still believe that. But the guys who actually did it were obviously Al Qaeda. In fact, one of the guys involved in that killing was Baghdadi, who then. Yeah, ironically went up to head up.
And whimpering and screaming
That's
at
right.
the end of a tunnel.
Yeah,
and,
so it's kind of a small, it's a small world. But yes, I was climbing the walls of frustration because we couldn't go after the sheikh. We didn't have enough information on him. And then the sheikh, as I said, wasn't the guy who actually equipped the suicide bomber. Out of the blue, one morning I get this email from someone I know who he worked for, with a picture of the guy who'd killed Max, who'd programmed the suicide bomber to go and kill him.
Wow.
Dead.
So we had friends out there that we didn't even know about.
That's exactly right.
The difference.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you as a friend, and you're a great author. Go out and check out When the Tempest Gathers. These are real stories from the guy who was leading our fight against ISIS and Al Qaeda, and he had some run-ins with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi before he wound up whining and whimpering and crying. But one by one, we take them down. And we're going to do that some more right after this on Liquid Lunch.